Chapter 7 Psychology Talk by Kelly Marie Ginsburg. I think I have a pretty good understanding of psychology. I mean, when Karen Van Dusen had her accident-prone day, ran into the soccer goalpost, set fire to the science lab, and pushed an entire shopping cart of film strips and herself down the back stairs, I wasn't fooled. It was all an attention-getting device because her older sister had just become a model, and Karen has a face like a Rottweiler. I read people. It's just like when Joey Sorrentino and Lynette Martinez started trading insults and fighting. Everyone else said, separate those two before they kill each other. But I knew that deep down there was a real attraction. And when Joey flushed Lynette's best barrette down the toilet and she responded by pushing him through the plate glass window of the art room, I knew it was true love. Psychology. I cured Sophie Tisdale's fear of lipstick, predicted the end of Adam Larie's scoring slump, and even helped Horace Meminsky get over his strange obsession with peanut butter. So, why couldn't I figure out Milo Neal? I didn't know whether to kiss him or strangle him. Seriously, he was the one who brought us Henrietta, yet he insisted on treating her like an animal. And for a guy who's supposed to be a genius, how could he be stupid enough to entrust Henrietta to Zachary for the weekend? Are you crazy? I bellowed on Monday morning when I found out. She hates Zachary. He rolled his eyes at me. A chicken doesn't have the intelligence. Henrietta is not stupid, I cut him off. She's a perceptive, sensitive creature, and if she hates Zachary Gustafson, then it must be for a good reason. Maybe chickens have special radar that can detect a maniac. Have you ever read those 6 screenplays of his? Why couldn't you give her to me? She went with you last weekend, he offered lamely. I made a face. Oh, I get it. She doesn't have the brains to hate somebody, but she finds it unacceptable to receive the same hospitality 2 weekends in a row. Half the class wanted Henrietta. Why him? Milo gave me a sheepish look. I thought maybe if I gave him a little responsibility, he might stop calling me and coming over to my house. Pretty good psychology if I do say so myself. You break down a patient's defensives, and he tells you what he's really thinking. Now, I was about to congratulate Milo on this breakthrough when I caught sight of Zachary at the far end of the hall. Follow me! I tossed over my shoulder as I sprinted over to Zachary. Henrietta wasn't with him. Oh, hi, he greeted. What's up? All right, I confronted him. Where is she? He looked blank. Where's who? Who? I struggled for control. Abraham Lincoln, Sonic the Hedgehog. Henrietta, you dolt! You were in charge of her this weekend. Oh, he said with a nervous laugh. That all got canceled. I had a little accident, so I couldn't do it. He showed me the remnants of a small bruise on his cheek. Well, who's got her now? I persisted. How should I know? I stared in hard. Who took Henrietta when you got hurt? He shrugged. Nurse Jansen brought me over to emergency, and then my parents drove me straight home after that. I don't know why I kicked him so hard, and I made a mental note to analyze my dreams that night to figure it out. Milo finally made it to the scene. I turned on him. I told you it was nuts to entrust Henrietta to this flake! He lost her! Instantly, Milo looked to Zachary, who nodded, studying his sneakers. Milo was appalled. When I found on Saturday night, you told me the specimen was 100%. Zachary struggled to save himself. Well, she might have been, wherever she was. He hugged him and shit. Milo was visibly upset. I have to admit, I felt some satisfaction in seeing Milo the Inflappable show some feeling. This is terrible, he exclaimed. My experiment is in danger of being compromised. I'll compromise your face if anything happens to Henrietta, I promised darkly. Maybe, I began. That's when I heard the cheering. It seemed to be coming from the cafeteria. Give me a T! Hollered somebody. T! Came across the voices. Give me an A! A! What does it spell? Henrietta! Chanted the group. We raced past the breakfast line and stopped dead. Atop a cafeteria table perched none other than Adam Laree holding the shopping bag aloft. I couldn't see Henrietta, but I could make out the impression of her sweet little beak pressed against the Macy's logo. Adam's hockey buddies and a handful of others made up the crowd. I looked daggers at Adam. You had her all along? He shrugged down at us. Zachary was hurt. Someone had to take Henrietta. My mom and I made a coop out of a couple of old hockey's nets in the garage, he added. Okay, Milo? Acceptable, Milo began. You should have called me, I cut him off. Henrietta hardly knows you. She must have been terrified in your dark, dingy garage, surrounded by total strangers all weekend. You had no right to do it. Hey, said Joey, she's our mascot. Mascot? It came from me, Milo, and Zachary. We finally won last Friday, and Henrietta was on the bench with us, so... The way Adam said it, you'd think it was the most normal, sensible thing in the world. She has to be there for the rest of the season. The other Rangers nodded in agreement. Adam, said Milo seriously, as an athlete, you must know that makes absolutely no scientific sense. Hey, man, said Steve sharply, you don't mess with a winning streak. What winning streak? I exploded. It was only one game. It doesn't matter, Adam insisted. If you lace your skates the wrong way before a big win, you do it that way forever. If your mom wears polka dots in the bleachers, it's law. If you step into your jockstrap left leg first, then becomes the next amendment to the Constitution. And that includes keeping a Tweety bird on the bench. Have I mentioned my theory about how hockey players are like cave dwellers crawling through the mud pit of 1,000 monster truck rallies? What? I mean, what could you say to a speech like that? Chapter 8. Chapter 8. Downloaded from the hard disk of Zachary Gustafson. The Brain Eaters. Scene 11. Interior, burning building. Night. Firefighters hack down the flaming door and Detective Jeffers leaps heroically through the fire, to which Steve lies, dying of 34 broken bones, internal bleeding, head wounds, and tonsillitis. Jeffers, are you all right? Steve, gasping for breath, forget about me. I'm a goner. You have to stop him. Jeffers, you mean the brain-eating psycho monster? Steve, I know his secret identity. Jeffers, what is it? Steve, breaking him in closer. To catch the brain-eating psycho monster, just look for a big... Jeffers, a big what? But it's too late. Steve's eyes roll back in his head and he dies. Cut to the brain-eating psycho monster, fleeing through the streets. His 6 insect legs showing under his trench coat. He spreads terror to all who see his repulsive, pustule-covered praying mantis head. He approaches the university science lab, home of some of the biggest and most delicious brains in the city. Hungrily, the monster licks his green lips with a tongue coated with glowing acid. Then, before our eyes, he mutates into his secret identity, which was... What? Stared at my computer screen at total despair. Right in the middle of the most exciting, pivotal scene in my screenplay, I had writer's block. I didn't have the slightest idea what the brain-eating psycho monster's secret identity should be. This was terrible. I'd never had writer's block in my whole life, and just when Milo and I were starting to hit it off, too. Oh, sure, he was pretty steamed about last weekend. I think his exact words were, "Go away, I never want to see you again for the rest of my life." And actually, I was pretty impressed I managed to get such an emotional reaction from a quiet guy like Milo. And that was one of the reasons I knew we were going to be so close. I chewed on my pen. I opened and closed every single drawer in my desk. Chewed on my pen again. This time the cap broke and I got ink in my mouth. Several minutes of hacking and spitting later, I was no closer to the solution to my problem. I was checking myself for permanent blueness when I caught a glimpse of a darting shape in the bathroom mirror. My throat seized. It was Doomsday. Headed straight for my room. Dewey! I made a desperate sprint across the hall and burst into my doorway. Doomsday already had his tiny baby hand cocked back, ready to throw a size D battery at my computer. I left my feet just as he launched the battery. With a flailing hand, I slapped it away, at the same time leaping over my little brother and interposing myself between him and the desk. But Doomsday still had plenty of ammo. He must have raided the junk drawer of my dad's desk. I blocked the fountain pen with my left hand and deflected the letter opener with my right. The chess queen made a nasty bump on my knee. The magnet and the pencil sharpener were a painful 1-2 punch as I stopped them with my chest. I won't even mention where the paperweight got me. I had no choice but to wait until room ran out of projectiles, since I didn't dare yell for my mother. She'd blame this all on me, just like last Friday. I mean, everybody steps on a mop caddy and rolls into a wall. It happens to millions of people. But Mom, my own flesh and blood, accused me of fighting and banned me from my computer for 3 days. It totally threw my screenplay off schedule and probably contributed to my writer's block. I couldn't risk it again. So I took the heat, and the pain, and the whiteout bottle in the face. Finally, the last protractor ricocheted off my solar plexus. Ha! I snorted. What are you gonna do now? Doomsday scrunched up his baby face and started to howl. Mom was on the scene in a nanosecond. Zachary Gustafson, how dare you pick on your little brother? And what happened to your room? It's a pigsty. It's a battlefield. It's a disgrace. She folded her arms. I knew I was toast. I made a feeble last-ditch effort. It was Dewey, Mom, honest! But even as I tried to defend myself, Mom strolled purposely over to my PC and pulled the plug. This will cost you a week away from your computer, young man. A whole week? That's too long! It's not fair! You're messing with my creativity! But at least I had my deadline, just like the big-time screenwriters. 7 days to figure out the secret identity of the brain-eating psycho monster. And finally, in hockey action on Saturday, came Mr. DeLong's voice over the PA system Monday morning. The Rangers defeated St. Cloud by a score of 8-5. That's 4 in a row for our Rangers. Don't forget to come to the pep rally after school today. The team will be there, and Henrietta. All through the halls of the school, I could hear the cheering. Didn't it figure? My 2 least favorite things. The hockey team and Milo's stupid chicken were turning into the heroes of the year. Coupled with my writer's block, it was pretty depressing. Just so happened to run by Milo standing in front of his locker for 20 minutes. He tried to walk away, but like any good friend, I stayed loyal. I followed him all the way to the science room. I had a nice conversation with your mom on Saturday. Actually, while I talked on the phone to Mrs. Neal in the background, I could hear my dearest friend hissing, "Tell him I'm not here! Tell him I've gone out! Tell him I moved to Europe!" He blushed. "I was kinda busy," he mumbled, throwing the lab door open. He probably wanted to slam it in my face, but that was impossible. The lab was jam-packed with people. Milo crammed himself in behind a tall 8th grader. Lafayette Hughes turned around and ignored us. "Hey, what's the big idea? Milo, how's it going? Great chicken, dude. First-class poultry, no lie." I could just make out the top of Kelly Marie's head in front of the throng. She waved. "Hi, Milo! Come on in! We're feeding Henrietta!" Milo melted into the teeming crowd. I tried to follow and bounced off of Lafayette. "I'm a close friend of Milo's," I protested. "In your dreams, nerd!" It was like the Hollywood parties I'm going to get invited to when I'm a big-time screenwriter. If you're not on the guest list, you're out. That dumb pullet was getting to be like a movie star in this school. Only the beautiful people were allowed to hang around. The only way I got in there at all was when the bell rang and Mrs. Baggio shooed all the tourists away. Kelly Marie was on hands and knees in front of the chicken wire. "See, sweetie? she cooed right into that blank, ugly chicken face. "Everybody loves you." "Because of the hockey team," Adam reminded her. As usual, Kelly Marie had this all worked out in her warped mind. "I admit it was the Rangers that brought her to her public attention, but it was her charm and personality that won everybody over." "Chickens don't have personality," Milo insisted. "They exist purely—" "She does so!" countered Kelly Marie. "She's happy and outgoing, but with a quiet, contemplative side." "And she's friendly," added Brenda. "She's great at Monopoly," Sheila put in. "Oh, come on!" Milo exploded. "The specimen doesn't have anywhere near the intelligence necessary to play even the most simple board game." "Well, I have to roll for her since her little wings can't hold the dice," Sheila conceded, "but if she wants to buy a property, she kind of cackles, and when she lands on free parking, she gets really excited." This looked like a perfect opportunity to win back a few points with Milo. "No way," I said with a wink in his direction. "How could a chicken ever put a hotel on Marvin Gardens?" With a cheep of outrage, Henrietta scratched and kicked with her toes, raising up a cloud of sawdust that drifted through the wire and settled on my shoes. "Hey," I blurted, "she did that on purpose!" "Chickens have no purpose either," Milo said, covering a smirk. Considering he was my best friend, he certainly seemed to enjoy seeing me suffer. A shriek from Kelly Marie brought the class to the attention. She was hopping up and down like a maniac, pointing at the birds high and in. "Kelly, what is it?" Mrs. Baggio asked in alarm. "Look! It's a feather! A real feather!" Big fat hairy deal. The bird had a feather on her butt. But our whole class abandoned their individual projects to rush over and examine this eighth wonder of the world. Whoop-dee-doo! "There's another one!" crowed Brendan, pointing to a wing. Even Milo kinda got into it, commentating while making notes. "Specimen maturing acceptably." "Acceptably!" claiming he was outraged. "Milo, Neil, your big brain must be covering your eye sockets. Don't you see what this really means? Our little Eddie is growing up!" I caught up with Milo again at lunch, but when I sat down beside him, he picked up his tray and moved to another table. Tried again at gym class, 7th period. Cleverly, I made sure we were on the same vaulting horse. As we flew by in opposite directions, I yelled, "We need to talk!" But I didn't get to tell him when and where because I got out of sync for our next vault. Coach Crenshaw spotted me trying to sneak ahead in line and sent me to the locker room in disgrace. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Milo turning his ankle on a tricky landing. In a split-second decision, I smashed my face full force into the changing room door. The nosebleed was like Niagara Falls. "Gustafson!" barked the coach, watching my towel turn crimson. "Nurse's office! Now!" So we were sitting on the bench outside the nurse's office, me bleeding and Milo groaning. Couldn't be sure if he was in agony because he didn't start making that noise until I sat down beside him. "How's your leg?" I asked very nasally. "You're bleeding on my sneakers," he replied, giving me the worm guts look, complete with sound effects. I was getting a little annoyed. Didn't he realize that I didn't have to have this nosebleed? That I was putting myself through this pain just to get the chance to talk to him? "Look, Milo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to abandon your experiment. I had a concussion." Milo glared at me like no best friend ever should. "That's not what I'm mad about. I'm mad because I phoned to check on the status of the specimen, and you out and out lied." He had me there. As a last resort, I told the truth. "You and I were just starting to hit it off, and I was afraid this would spoil our friendship. I figured the chicken was probably okay, and maybe I'd never have to tell you." Milo's expression softened a little. "Yeah, okay, maybe." Then he shook his head in frustration. But this whole school is nuts! All I'm trying to do here is a science project." I shrugged. "And it's going great. The whole school loves Henrietta." "That's the point!" he exploded. "It's a specimen. It doesn't have anything to do with friendship, or hockey, or love, or popularity. It's a link in the food chain. It exists to be hatched, raised, slaughtered, and eaten. That's my project. Nothing more." My ears perked up. Slaughtered and eaten? What, don't you understand? Milo asked a little impatiently. Chickens don't die of old age, they're killed, cooked, and eaten. I was still in the dark. Yeah, but you're not gonna do that part, the killing and the eating. Of course I am, Milo erupted. What's the point of studying the food chain if we don't complete the link? At the science fair, I'm going to serve chicken to the judges while they review the experiment notes. I goggled. You mean our chicken? Like Henrietta chicken? Dead Henrietta chicken? It's the food chain, Milo explained again. The judges will actually participate in the end of the link. I figured that would be a nice finishing touch. If Milo had told me that he was an alien and that his nose was about to blast off from his face and burrow down to the Earth's core, I wouldn't have been any more surprised. I mean, if Kelly Marie knew this, she'd go supernova. Everybody who had adopted Henrietta as a pet, mascot, hobby, or friend didn't have the faintest idea that they were looking at an oven stuffer in training. I bet Milo thought it was common knowledge. That rotten chicken who pecked me, scratched me, and made sure everybody in the world knew how much he hated me, who even gave me a concussion. That fuzzy fiend from the underworld had a date with the frying pan! I don't get too many moments of ultimate joy, but this was one of them. Milo interrupted my thoughts. What are you grinning about? I think my nose has just stopped bleeding. At that moment, Nurse Jansen appeared, hauled Milo in, and sent out Steve Tenario with a bandage around his thumb. The musclehead took one look at my bloody nose and red-stained shirt and grinned nastily. What happened to you, Zach? Did you get caught up in one of your own screenplays? But nothing could spoil this perfect day for me. I'm really happy the Rangers are doing so well with your new mascot, I said, and laughed wildly. You're weird, Steve accused, and walked away. I was still doubled over when he turned, puzzled, to frown at me. All week I walked on air, hugging the secret. I got detention for humming. Every time Kelly Marie opened her mouth about Henrietta, I had to leave the room and laugh into my fist in the hall. When I saw all those idiots who weren't even in our class lining up to clean chicken droppings from the floor of the pen, the truth was almost bursting out of me. Don't get too attached to the chicken. She's not staying. I went to the hockey pep rally Monday after school. All the Rangers got a big reception, sure. But then Adam held up Henrietta and the crowd went nuts. A couple of those muscleheads unfurled a banner that said, Henrietta forever. And I was thinking, don't count on it. The Rangers won their 5th in a row and everyone was talking championship. Oh, I knew what they could serve at the victory banquet. But seriously, when their good luck charm got sacrificed in the name of science, would Adam and the Rangers start losing again? That would be the icing on the cake, served after a delicious chicken dinner. When I was in the lab, of course, I played it cool. I didn't want to spill the beans, but every time I looked at that miserable bird, I pictured her as a different recipe. Tuesday, she was Cajun style. Wednesday, stuffed and roasted. Thursday, chicken cordon bleu. By Friday, I saw fajitas, complete with guacamole and flour tortillas. Best of all, the end of the week was also the end of Mom's ban on my computer. I'd been so distracted, what with all the happiness and stuff, I hadn't really given a thought to my writer's block and the secret identity of the brain-eating psycho monster. But I was confident. It wasn't even Saturday yet, and as I drifted into sleep, the Brain Eaters was playing itself out like a movie in my half-dreams. I saw the psycho monster stalking through the streets and stopping in front of the university lab. Its hideous features began to distort as it mutated into its secret identity, a form so innocent and harmless that it could move among its victims without creating a stampede of terror. Then, in a split second, it could crack open a dozen heads and be popping down brains like peanuts. I was just about asleep, but I struggled to stay awake enough to see the end of the mutation. The secret identity. The Psycho Monster's new features coalesced and came into focus. The homicidal arch-evil-doer was now a big chicken! I sat bolt upright in bed. A chicken? Fade to black.